Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today is Umoja, Sunday, November the 3rd, 2024. And what is to follow is an expanded version of my presentation titled Hip Hop as a Kimoyo Tradition, an Introduction to Jàṣẹ, Reconceptualizing Hip Hop Culture. And this is what I presented at the 36th annual Sheikh Anta Diop conference that was held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on the 18th of October, the 18th and 19th of October. So it's been a couple weeks since that conference, and just wanted to share my presentation for those of you who were unable to make it. So we will get started in just a moment. So make sure that you thumb up the video, and you share this conversation with your friends. And everything's about to go down right now. And we are back. So I just want to thank each and every one of you who are catching this program live. And then, of course, those of you who are catching this on the archive. We are streaming live via X, YouTube, and it should be streaming on the Patreon page. And just want to thank each and every one of you for rocking with me all throughout 2024, and some big things are going. And, we may get into some of that later on in the conversation. So I'm not going to hold y'all too long, but as stated previously, what is about to be discussed is my presentation from the Sheikh Anta Diop conference for 2024. And so the theme of the conference was compassion, care, and consciousness, Africological causes and effect. And I'll just kind of read the theme so y'all can get a better understanding of why I chose this topic to present at this year's conference. And so it states, this year's conference, or this year's theme, Compassion, Care, and Consciousness, Africological Causes and Effects, addresses the ongoing worldwide social, political, and spiritual unrest that Pan-African scholars and practitioners are encountering across political, economic, health, and educational fronts. We recognize the state of emergency many of us find ourselves in, and with the rise in fascism, warfare, and attacks on social justice on the continent and throughout the diaspora, we also know, tied to Sankofa, that we must look back to age-old traditions in order to forge a new path ahead with compassion, care, and consciousness. While seeking to extend the objectives of our current scholarship and practice, it is our hope that this year's conference will reimagine and explore ways in which African ethics of connection and harmony can shape the very form and understanding of our current age. So underlying the theme for the conference is going back and looking at traditional African worldviews, concepts, and philosophies, and using those things to interpret and imagine, interpret the present and to imagine a better future. And so it's within that context that I brought the concept and the idea of the conversation that we are having today. So, as many of you are familiar with, if you are a frequent viewer of this channel, is that we are in the process of renaming African spirituality and reconceptualizing African spirituality, and we've given it the label kimoyo, uh, taken from the Kikongo language out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And where I first heard this or seen this combination of the morphemes Ki comes out of the work of the late Dr. Kimbwadende Kiabonseki Fukia. And so we have been discussing kimoyo and all of its variants, and I'm currently working on a text, an introduction to kimoyo. So we'll have something more formal for the general public to study and to compare it with other works on African wisdom traditions, spiritual traditions, however you want to call it. And so, as a result of my studies of kimoyo and my participation and love for hip hop music, hip hop culture, and its underlying philosophies, I noticed the commonality between the two. And it is my argument that in order to understand what hip hop is in its essence, you must understand what kimoyo is. And so it's within that, and also entering the debate on the historicity of hip hop culture and what it is, I have renamed it Jàṣẹ. And so we'll get into the details of what that means in a moment. So let me switch that to the live. And I am just going to share my screen now. So, I need to get rid of that. And I will share the screen now. So let me make this full screen. That way it takes up all the real estate, and hopefully, depending on your device, that you are able to read the text. So I presented on Saturday, October the 19th, and so I still have that date on the presentation. But as mentioned a number of times already, the title of this presentation is Hip Hop as a Kimoyo Tradition, an introduction to Jàṣẹ, right? So what is to follow is a small part of a larger inquiry which seeks to better understand African cultures, their ways of being, philosophies, histories, and values, and how these phenomena translate into experience among African people in general and African Americans more specifically. This lifelong research project has led me to engage very intricately with various wisdom traditions across the continent of Africa. Traveling this African superhighway of wisdom forced me to reflect deeply about my life and the pivotal moments and environments that have shaped and guided me up to this point of understanding. Although born in the late 70s, and talking about myself, a critical time period in my development was from the mid 80s to the mid 90s, from which I was introduced to and inundated by and participated in all aspects of hip hop culture, which include MCing, DJing, b-boying, or breaking, as some would say, and graffiti. And so this time span, talking about from the mid 80s to the mid 90s, is what I call the golden era of hip hop. And we'll have to have a separate conversation of uh, what makes the golden era of hip hop the golden era, and why I choose that time span, those dates, uh, to mark the the golden era of hip hop, right? And as I stated, I was involved in all aspects of the four basic elements, and there are other elements which include, of course, beatboxing, knowledge, uh, fashion, and the like. But those are the agreed upon at least basic four in terms of the elements. And so it is because of my graffiti art and stuff like this that I got into graphic design and web development and ultimately coding, in terms of my profession is all based on my participation in hip hop culture. And so even to the extent that in high school in the 90s, because I lived down south at the time, um the South really kind of rocked with, well, at least in Texas, I should say. In Texas, because Texas really, it's the South in the central South, but it really begins the cultural spread of what is called West Coast culture, because a lot of the people from the West Coast came from Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and a few come from further east in terms of Alabama and Mississippi. But most of the folks during the Great Migrations coming out of Alabama, Mississippi, and the like went up north to places like Chicago, New York, and the like. And and so at this time, what was this is when like the gangster rap movement was heavy and in rotation in terms of the radio and the like. So it was very few of us where I live that was just really entrenched and deep into hip hop culture in terms of its original elements, in terms of, lyricism, beat making, production, b-boying, dancing, and the like. And so this, I always show this photo, and this is before digital cameras. So this is one of those one-time use cameras, or one of those cameras that you had to get the film developed. And so a sister by the name of Marguerite Witt took this photo, and she was my hip hop partner in crime uh, back in Sam Houston days. And she took this photo of me and my homeboy right here in the front. His name is Tawfiq Manel. He was out of Rhode Island, and a couple of her classmates that are behind us. So I'm in the white t-shirt with my eyes kind of closed there, and so she wrote the name of each one of us in the photo. And so you can see at the bottom here where it has my government name is going to say Harold J. But right above it, it says hip hop, because that was the name that people would call me. That was the nickname that people would give me, was hip hop. And so I just always want to show that too, because I don't have that many photos of me as a young person. So this is a rare photo of me from that particular time period. So I just wanted to uh, show that and put that in the record if y'all haven't seen it. So I'll continue the conversation now. So, as many of you know, I argue that hip hop originates ultimately from a place called New Orleans, Louisiana, in a place called Congo Square, where jazz was birthed and flourished. The spirit of jazz gave birth to a form of second line street jazz, which was later called funk, and whose principal high priest was a man by the name of James Brown. This combination of jazz funk traveled from the South in the late 60s and settled in an area called the Bronx, New York. It landed at a time when the Bronx experienced extreme poverty and its citizens existed during a time of extreme political unrest at the tail end of the civil rights freedom struggle and the effects of the Vietnam War. Frustrated with the times and with the opportunities to escape, the African American youth of the Bronx sought various ways to heal from all of the economic, physical, and psychological violence enacted upon them by the apartheid regime. Rejecting mainstream society and the mandates of the power holders who sought their destruction, they gathered in sacred open park spaces and called upon the spirits of their ancestors of Congo Square, who spoke to them in the language of soul music, syncopated drum beats, and the electrifying guitar riffs. The youth of the Bronx responded to the receiving of these gifts of the ancestors and created what ultimately came known in the 80s as hip hop culture. This current presentation re-examines the history and evolution of the culture of hip hop and how its elements are used as vehicles of healing and wholeness in the lives of African American people. After a careful and critical analysis of all the features of hip hop and its underlying philosophy, it has become apparent that hip hop should be classified as an authentic African American spiritual tradition within the larger framework of African spirituality and deep thought. In this discourse, we reconceptualize both African spirituality and hip hop culture with two new labels that we feel are more authentic to their essence and purpose. Therefore, kimoyo and jàshe, respectively. The importance of this reconceptualization is contextualized by the likes of Amos Wilson, who reminds us that when we get ready to create revolution, we must redefine the world and redefine words. There's no way around it. The languages that people learn and speak are most frequently directly related to the power relations between them. And these ideas are echoed by Malefe Kitty Asante, and I won't read all of that, but he's talking about the nature of, I might as well read it if I'm going to try to explain it. So I'll just say, indeed, culture is the most revolutionary stage of awareness. That is, culture in this sense that Amilcar Cabral, Frantz Fanon, and Milana Karenga have written about. This is at the macro level of education and includes science, music, engineering, architecture, dance, art, philosophy, and economics. When we move away from an Eurocentric framework, we become more innovative. We know that it is difficult to create freely when we use someone else's motifs, styles, images, and perspectives. Thus, the Afrocentric awareness is the total commitment to the African liberation anywhere and everywhere by a consistent, determined effort to repair any psychic, economic, physical, or cultural damage done to Africans. And so when we're trying to reconceptualize the essence of who we are and organize it, we there's going to be moments where we're going to have to redefine certain things, even if we become accustomed to them, because we've been forced to adopt English language and its words that oftentimes we cannot find the proper terms in English to describe exactly what is going on with African people. And this is exactly, what I argue here when we talk about hip hop culture and the like. If we understand it as a jàshe tradition, then hip hop begins to make sense. And when it starts to make sense in that context, we can start utilizing it to the best of our ability, right? And so this renaming process has been echoed by the likes of Dr. Milana Karenga as well in his text on Kwanzaa, where he states that the first act of a self-conscious, self-determining people is to redefine and reshape their world in their own image and interest. And so, echoing a bit about what Amos Wilson was saying, then we understand that we're going to have to reconceptualize and terraform the world to in our image so that it can serve our interest. And so this is further explained in terms of the personality of Black people and its power relations as discussed by Dr. Amos Wilson in the Blueprint for Black Power. So in this text, he states, however, Black empowerment and Black power, whether epitomized by a relatively autonomous Black controlled social system or by a social system equally controlled by Blacks and whites, require that personalities of Black be organized by a Black controlled social system so that their contents, abilities, tendencies, interests, and tastes are compatible with the self-preserving, liberated interest of that system and the individual's interest of its members. So what he's compelling us to do here is to organize and take control of our social system. And so, again, this is in context to power relations. And we'll see a little bit how these kind of power relations um, affected us in various ways, which even cause the birth of these particular traditions in which we're contextualizing here this day. So I argue that there are three characteristics that have allowed me to see hip hop as an authentic African spiritual tradition. And they are one, my immersion into hip hop culture during the golden era. Two, my introduction and immersive study of Africology. And three, my initiations into various African wisdom traditions. Because of my unique experiences within hip hop culture and my subsequent studies, I have been able to find much of the discourse surrounding the nature of hip hop, its characteristics, purposes, expressions, dynamics, spirit, and history to be inadequate. These inadequacies are the result of, I argue, it not being discussed in its proper Africological context, and that many aspects of the culture are mislabeled because we lack the adequate terms in English to identify them. Therefore, I have taken it upon myself to dig deep into my ancestral bag of wisdom in order to reconceptualize and reorganize hip hop culture with plans to institutionalize it so that we can better serve the interests of African people. And hold on one second. Okay, never mind. So, with that said, we now get to the nitty gritty in terms of the presentation itself. But due to a lack of time and space, I will not be able to go through much detail and will only discuss one of the 5 elements of the Jàṣẹ tradition. So firstly, we have substituted, as I spoke of earlier, the phrase African religion with the term kimoyo. The term kimoyo can be defined as the art of adding life to life. Kimoyo then describes a dynamic cosmic and cultural vital force exchange system, which consists of harvesting, utilizing, and the transmission of vital force. The vital force is called moyo in Kikongo, but among the Yoruba, it is called ashe, from which we get the term jàshe from, which is also a play on the word jazz. But before I go there, I just want to kind of show what the word moyo and the word kimoyo comes from. So the word moyo is a word for the heart, life, spirit, soul, courage, will, desire, inclination, feeling, mood, and thought. And it's also used as a greeting. In isiZulu, it is air, spirit, soul, wind, breath. But in the Ashanti Twi language, it is pronounced Mogya, which means the blood. And a variant, a doublet in the language of Chiluba is Munji, which means the heart, right? And so the G sound is what either becomes the Y, or the G is dropped for the Y, the palatalizing Y behind it. And that's how you get the ya in certain pronunciations. But in other pronunciations, the G becomes J, and it's pronounced mojo, right? And it is come to us in the United States and become part of the English lexicon now. But when you say that, um, um, I'm taking this drink, for example, to get my mojo working, that mojo is, your spirit, your soul, your vitality. And in some texts, like with the online etymological dictionary, they they define it as magic, right? um but you can find a variant of that mojo or mocho in the Gullah language, which deals with so-called witchcraft, which is just more magic. But it in this case is dealing with words of power. And in the Fula language, Mocho is the medicine man. So you can see that it is because there's no separation in African wisdom traditions for medicine and so-called magic or affirmations or speaking into power the uh words of power into the medicine to make it more potent and active. So this is how these other definitions become part of the conversation. So Jàṣẹ is a collection of life strategies that helps an individual to learn how to shegun, which is to win, overcome, to tower over life's 1001 of its challenges to become an ashegun, which in the Yoruba language means a conqueror, a vanquisher, a victor of life. The goal of Jàṣẹ is to achieve a jàshe, which means victory after much difficulty in the Yoruba language. To obtain a victorious consciousness, as we add on to that, through the mastery of the five elements. But before we get into the five elements of the Jàṣẹ tradition, I just want y'all to know again that when we say Jàṣẹ, it is the ashe of jazz. And the word jazz is an African word, and there's very different pronunciations, even in the Egyptian language, of what is ultimately become jazz. But our form of jazz, the word jazz, comes from more so the West Coast African languages like Wolof, Fulani, and the like. And so, but it's also a play on word on the word jasi in terms of worth and value. So when you add life to life, you're empowering something to be. And when you empower something, that is what we mean by value. Something has more value when you can utilize it to increase the vitality of the system, right? So we can discuss more of that in the in the future. And I will be kind of monitoring the comments. So if you have a question or a comment, you can post it, and I'll try to answer it if I see uh your question or whatnot in the comments. So we'll continue. So that word ashe is found in the ancient Egyptian language in its more fuller form. And so there's two dialectical variants of the word ashe. And one is wisser and the other one is was. Well, but really it's like or it's really kind of like orisha. Like if you was about to say like orisha, oris, that's closer to um the 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 pronunciation or proposed pronunciation in dialect too. But ashe has to deal with authority, power, law, command, or the force to make things happen and multiply. It is also a word for a scepter, and so is the Wisir staff's rods or was scepter and the like. And I've kind of gone over this in many of my my text, and this is something that you can uh, see in any one of the texts, including my latest one on Kemet and its meanings. Uh, here's the link. Here's a book here. Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards a Meaning for the Place Name Kemet. And so I have these tables and further explanations there. So we will continue. So when and these are some visualizations, other uh some of the variants in terms like of the staffs and emblems of power in ancient Egypt. So these are the emblems of Ashe in the ancient Egyptian language. And so again, we don't have time to kind of go through the linguistics of it, but everything is verified and right and exact, right? So we're connecting this to this concept of jazz, and beginning. We got to remember at the beginning of hip hop, there is no hip hop music. All the music that was being played at the time was jazz, soul, and funk. That's all it was. So what they're considering hip hop culture is really just parties that were curated by certain DJs in the park. And it's just a playing of music and dancing. That's all it is. Everything else is added on at different times in the future. And so it all culminates really like in 1980. That's when you 79, 80s when you get the term hip hop, being applied to the music and culture, and the African Bambaataa claiming that these are all the elements of hip hop. That doesn't really emerge into the late 70s, early 80s, right? But many of the artists that came out during this time associated themselves with jazz, and you can tell in terms by the music, as in terms of the sound, but a lot of them also in their names. So like in this particular example that I have here on the screen is a few lyrics from Rakim, excuse me, Eric B. and Rakim, the song "I Ain't No Joke" that came out in 1987. And so the lyric says, "Even if it's jazz or the quiet storm, I hook a beat up converted into hip hop form." And this will make sense when you compare the lyrics to the group Stetsasonic. And there's a line in the song, ironically called "Talking All That Jazz." It says, "Stop. Check it out, my man. This is the music of a hip hop band. Jazz. Well, you can call it that. But this jazz contains a new format." So they're still seeing themselves within the jazz tradition, but it's a new type of jazz, a new form of jazz. So they're taking the essence of jazz, and as Rakim saying, put it into hip hop form. And so it is this kind of reconnection, because it got away from jazz and funk when the disco era came in, and then when they started doing more electronica beats. So that early 80s, haha, baby bubba, and just the drum machine type, that's when they was thinking that it was going to be a fad. But the golden era of hip hop emerges when they reacquaint themselves with jazz. And if for all of us who kind of grew up in that time, go back and listen to all your favorite hip hop jams. And 8 times out of 10, they're going to be jazz influenced, right? So some of the names that you can find, for example, we know of DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince in terms of the rap group. He also created, and he's here out of Philly, and a Touch of Jazz Records, right? Matter of fact, there was a song on one of the early records that I think that came out in '86 called "A Touch of Jazz," produced by DJ Jazzy Jeff. Then you have Jaz-O the rapper. Then you have Daddy-O the rapper. Now, Daddy-O is a jazz term. So like when you listen to some of the old heads, they be like, "What's up, Daddy-O?" Right? So Daddy-O the rapper from Stetsasonic takes on a jazz term as his name, Daddy-O. We can almost call him Asheo, but we won't do that. And then you have like albums, for example, from Guru, from Gangstar, the Jazzmatazz albums. You have rappers by the name of like Count Bass D, right? Kind of a play on the word Count or the name Count Basie, who was a prominent jazz artist from back in the day. You have groups like Jazz Addicts, and Jazz Liberators, right? And then, for those who didn't have the direct jazz in their names or names associated with jazz concepts, you had the heavily influenced jazz moniker. So whether you're talking about A Tribe Called Quest, whether you're talking about, of course, Eric B. and Rakim, whether you're talking about Big Daddy Kane, whether you're talking about Diggable Planets, Slum Village, of course, Jay Dilla out of that mix, who's part of that production. The whole neo soul vibe, is based on emergence of jazz and hip hop. That's all neo soul is. It's soul music in the form of jazz hip hop, right? And so jazz, which I call the jàshe, is very influential in shaping, what we come to know as hip hop culture. And so within the jàshe tradition, for which we are, recapitalizing. Before I go there, I just want to, recommend two books. One is Jazz and American Religion, Spirits Rejoice, and Jazz Religion, the Second Line in Black New Orleans. And so these two texts, and there, of course, there's other citations in there which you can follow the trail, informs us of how spirituality is integral to jazz. And it's that spirituality, mixed with the Benin voodoo, Haitian voodoo, African American hoodoo, as expressed in the music, which of course shaped even our Christianity and how we do Christianity here in the United States. And it's that spiritual element that makes itself known in the music. And so this is part of the conversation of why we have to consider hip hop, and I mean hip hop culture, not that other crap that's being given the term hip hop, as part of a kimoyo wisdom spiritual tradition, right? And so even that conversation has to be given at a different time from now. And so we treat jàshe like kung fu, in that this is a scene from Jackie Chan's character when he's training Jaden Smith's character in the movie Karate Kid 2, or the more updated Karate Kid. I don't know if it was Karate Kid 2, because I think they had a Karate Kid 2 already. But when Jaden Smith's character is, asked to put on and off his jacket, which is supposed to be kind of a callback to the first Karate Kid, where Daniel's son had to wax on and wax off the car. And they were trying to instruct him that everything that they do is karate, is kung fu. You're learning the arts. even if it looks different. So in the movie with the updated movie with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan, you know, they switch from karate to kung fu in the film. And so he says kung fu lives in everything we do. It lives in how we put on a jacket and how we take off a jacket. It lives in how we treat people. Everything is kung fu. Right? And for those of us, you know, who are part of hip hop culture, you know that hip hop is a way of living, a way of being. Everything you do is hip hop. Everything you do is jàshe, right? And so now we get into these particular 5 elements. So again, the goal of jàshe is to achieve a jàshe, which is victory after much difficulty, to obtain a victorious consciousness through the mastery of the 5 elements or healing arts. So these healing arts are Orin Ashe, the expression of Ashe through music. So it's not just DJing, because hip hop has evolved to where people are producing their own music now. So remember that the DJs just played the music that was already made by the jazz, soul, and funk artists. But now uh the many of the DJs have become producers, or many of the places that the players and other bands and whatnot became producers in hip hop. So you have to evolve it to where it's not just simply DJing. It's the creation of the music as well. So that's why I say Orin. Orin is a Yoruba word for music. And so it's the Ashe of music, the expression of Ashe through music, right? And then we have Ashe Joe, the expression of Ashe through dance. The word Jo means to dance. And so it's not simply breaking. And I really don't know why they kind of honed in simply on breakdancing as quote unquote hip hop dance. But, you know, when you went to the parties, everybody wasn't breaking. And for those who did break, you didn't break the entire party. You know, there's community dances, there's quote unquote urban dances. It's just dance. The music dictates how you respond to it in the form of dance. So, you know, we don't limit it simply to quote unquote break dancing or b-boying. And so this includes house dance, you know, any of the kind of the communal urban dances. All of that is in the Ashe Joe tradition, right? Then you have Iyashe, the expression of Ashe through the visual arts. And so the root in this is ya, which is a verb meaning to draw or to paint. And so iya is the e, the I in the front, nominalize it and kind of abstracts it. And so now we use this to mean art in general. And so it's the Ashe, or the expression of Ashe through the visual arts, right? So that's another healing art. And then we have a falche, which is the power of making events to happen through authoritative utterance. This is called Heka in ancient Egyptian, Nomo amongst the Dogon. And but this is the Ashe, the expression of Ashe through potent speech. So formally of emceeing. And so, you know, for each of these elements, we're going to have a different, you know, presentation and conversation. So, and lastly, the 5th element is eshegun. And eshe is a word for fist, right? And goon is used in various contexts, but really meaning in terms of war, fight, combat, right? So we interpret this as the expression of Ashe through the combat arts. And so for the jàshe tradition for which we are developing, we have 4 foundational arts of eshegun. That is 52 blocks, jujitsu, capoeira, and the game of chess. And so we consider the game of chess as a martial arts training in terms of training the mind to think strategically and the like. right? And so 52 blocks also includes weapons, right? And peace to Itaye Heron and X_G and Born Eternal Lord Allah and Jafari Kawende and Carl Spears. Thank you for joining the conversation and making yourselves known in the chat. And so we will continue. So this presentation will focus on the Ashejo, or breakdancing, or the Ashe the expression of Ashe through the art of dance, and demonstrate how dance is the principal modality of healing in African wisdom traditions. So many years ago, when I first met Professor James Smalls, I don't know if this is his I don't know if this is his saying or if he got this from somewhere, but this is where I first heard it, and that is, you can tell the health of a nation by how well they dance. This is something that he told me when I first interviewed him, like over 20 years ago, right, in Houston, Texas. And this is remember the theme of the conference, and that is having to deal with healing in these kind of turbulent times. So we're going to revisit the function of dance and the healing process, right? And so when discussing breakdancing, the literature usually describes it simply as an energetic, athletic, and improvisational dance style that incorporates moves from gymnastics and martial arts. But as a former b-boy who sees through an Africological lens, I interpret b-boying as a healing art that uses footwork to harvest ashe for the purpose of psychic and spiritual repair. It is analogous to the healing dance that the Kung of the Kalahari performs to help their bodies get into a trance-like state called Kia. They reach this state by activation of an energy that they call Num at the base of the spine, which is the basis of their healing dance. The word Num is often translated as medicine, but Katz, who is the author of this text here, Boiling Energy, translated as energy. The Num energy is invisible, though it can be seen and picked up by the experiencing Kia. Otherwise, Num is known only by its action and effects. It is located only by its existence in a particular form, whether it is a person, a song, or a beat. And here we equate the concept of Num amongst the Kalahari Kung with the concept of Ashe. They have the same meanings and the like. And so John Ume, in his book After God is the Bia, kind of talks about a similar situation. So same attitude is present in the dance form called, excuse me, I skipped my notes here. So John Ume describes a similar approach to healing through the dance among the Igbo, as he states, after dancing and dancing and dancing for a long while, you should pound your Ike, which is the unpalatalized variant of the word ashe, energy power on the ground. Therefore, dance, descend, and rest on the ground by effecting a recoil of your divine energy as Ike Delani that is at the base of your spine. So we have two traditions here, or two evidences here, of this notion of vital power or force resting at the base of the spine. But you notice in both of these traditions, we don't sit and meditate to raise this energy out of the forehead. We dance. And so this is in the Igbo tradition, as discussed here in After God is the Bia, and in the Kalahari Kung tradition, speaking of Num, that vital power that boils and you enter a state of Kia, right? So The same attitude is present in the dance form called crumping, which originated in Los Angeles, California, and can be seen in a pivotal scene in the documentary film Rise, during which there is a comparison of the crump dancers in the film and traditional African dancing and fighting. And the screenshot that you see here is of a young lady by the name of Daisy in the film. And you see her being hugged and carried away behind this young man who's giving the interview, saying that she got struck. And so this concept of getting struck within the crumping tradition is a term used to describe like a trance-like state that the crumpers enter when they dance. Crumpers often perform in a state of personal transcendence that is achieved by focusing inward while also projecting outward to the audience. This is equivalent to the Kia state among the Kung, for which we mentioned earlier. And so this notion of either when we're talking about crump dancing, which is just a part of the Ashe Jo tradition, the healing arts tradition, it is used for healing purposes as they discuss in the film. And so in the text Africanisms in American Culture, edited by Joseph E. Holloway, in the K. Maltzby, titled Africanisms in American, she gives a relatable interpretation of the music for which we find ourselves involved in creating here in African American culture in relationship to its as a continuum of African traditions that we brought over here in the United States. So she says the song lyrics and the music styles of funk, disco, and rap music epitomize the changing and sometimes conflicting viewpoints about progress. Although many performers continue to express optimism about the future, some introduced lyric themes of frustration, disillusionment, and distress. The soul sound dominated the first half of the 1970s. By the mid 1970s, it had been transformed. Whereas soul carries the trademark of message music. So this is something that a lot of us don't realize. Message music is what they call soul music. So soul music was that deep relating music that either had an inspiring message or it spoke, truth to power in that particular time. So when you're talking about uh uh soul music, it is music with a message, right? So this is what it was called back in the day. Whereas soul carries a trademark of message music, funk, disco, and rap music bore the stamp of party music. It injected a new spirit of life into the Black communities and became a major unifying force for a core of African Americans. This spirit is reflected in the lyric themes: party, have a good time, let yourself go, and dance, dance, dance. These themes suggest that the music had a therapeutic function rather than communicate political and intellectual messages. It encouraged Blacks to release tension by simply being themselves. At the same time, the infectious beat of the music created an atmosphere that allowed for self-expression in unrestricted social interactions. So those jams that we were going to in the parks in the Bronx were set up so that the community could come and heal and recharge from the devastations of the time in the communities, and as a result of being forced into ghettos and poverty and the like. But as I stated earlier, what we're calling hip hop in its very beginnings was simply the DJs curating parties. And the people would come to have a good time, to release the tensions and the stress from existing in this hostile apartheid environment. And so not until Melly Mel came into the picture that you start to get some social commentary and the soul is brought back into the party music. Right? And so when that coupled with the jazz coming in back into the 80s, that's when you get the golden era of hip hop. That's when, you know, it was a highly political and Afrocentric music, very creative, jazz oriented and the like. All of that stems, you know, from going back into the ancestral vault and bringing those names and those essences forward for the new generation. And thanks to Ataye Brown Heron for the donation. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And Carl Spear says, LA representing, Cali in the house. Crumping became popular with Tommy the Clown parties in the neighborhood. His people were the best at the crumping dance style. Indeed. Like when I look at crumping now, you know, it's kind of evolved. You know, it's been some time, but it's not the same as what I saw in that Rise film with Tommy the Clown and the like. It was a different spirit, that energy. It was more spiritual in its orientation than what you see now. It's kind of become popular. It's around the world, and you know the farther you get from the center, you know, it becomes a little diluted. But you know, this is part of the reasons why we have these discussions, so that we can keep that memory alive and keep that tradition alive. And so it's because of that therapeutic aspect of the culture in terms of Ashejo, in terms of the dance, that we talk about movement being medicine, right? This is therapy. This is how we release stress and we heal ourselves by conjuring up that Ashe, you know, letting it move us and passing it on to others, you know, in the cipher, so they can heal too, right? And it is with that I had created this little video that I'll play now. And so let me remove this, and I'm gonna add this to the
was hip-hop in the very beginning. Dancing. It was no rapping. Hip-hop now is associated with rap. It was no rapping back then when it first started. There was no rap. It was just people dancing. It was
Would you say burning is a part of hip-hop?
Of course it is.
It is.
That's the genesis of it.
Burning is
and that hip-hop wasn't even thought about.
Right.
It was just playing music.
Right.
Having fun.
Right.
That's what it was. The community. And when they hear a Disco King playing music,
Right.
people from everywhere came.
Right.
So all that hip hop,
Right.
it was no hip hop.
Right.
It was just playing music, having fun.
But even then, you know, it wasn't like a crime-ridden place, and it was just good, clean fun. We had fun.
Fun, right?
We had fun, yes.
Yeah.
You already know. Check it out. Dance is something that is inexplainable. It's imponderable. It's passion. It's art. It's love. It's life. It's so many things. It's a means of coping. It's therapeutic. It's inspiring. It's a way for you to actually communicate non-verbally.
Just like the yogis in East Asia, they sit down and meditate. We dance. Do you understand? We don't sit down to meditate. We dance. That's how we leave our body. We chesa rojo. We play the spirit. We work it out.
What does that mean?
Chesa rojo literally means to play the spirit.
Okay.
Or to play the heart.
But at the end of the day,
The secret is they're trying to quieten the mind. But in the African space, our expression is different. It's the sound of the drum. It is the dance. It is the stomping of the ground. It is the sweat. And imagine when you are stomping on the ground, the stresses that you are letting go of your system. It's not just an exercise, but literally the whole body is beginning to get a vibration around where I am and where I am coming from. And in some certain cases, in the moments of those dances, your kundalinis begin to arise from the lower part into the space of the spirit. And other people have been able to translate, transform, transport themselves into spiritual realms during some of those dances. And the drum must be loud enough so that it blocks away all other patterns of thinking.
Tell them to create a ball, and then you just use that ball of energy, and instead of throwing it out, people would think that's a crump move. That's a crump move. That's not a crump move. You gonna throw it out, and you hold it, and you let it go, and then right when you see the tail, you grab it by the tail and you bring it back in, and you just got this piece of energy, and you're manipulating it. You know, it's you create power, then you tame it.
And that is the end of my presentation. And I hope that, even though it wasn't as much information as I wanted to share, we only had 15 minutes, so I expanded it a bit for this conversation. But, hopefully you get an idea. So this is, the beginning of a series of conversations. And, if y'all have any questions or thoughts, you can ask them in the chat, or you can join the panel discussion. And so I put the link in the chat. So I'm going to pin the message now. So it should be at the very top of the chat. And so if you want to continue the discussion, you can join the panel. And so X_G says, so how do you dance right? You have to explain the question. I don't know if you were responding to a particular statement I made or into the video. So let me know exactly what you mean. And our good brother Shakara says, that's my brother Mikael Amin. Salute. And I'm thinking you're talking about the brother who was talking about the Chezo Rojo in the video. And so I downloaded that from TikTok. And he was echoing, and I put his conversation as well as the elder conversation because they echoed what we saw in the Igbo tradition coming from John Ume in After God is Debia, as well as the Kum in the Kalahari tradition that we saw in the book Boiling Energy by Katz. And I hope you got my recent message. I don't know if you got it. I tried to send something to you before, but it was I didn't realize it was 3 gigabytes of information, and so it wouldn't let me send it, so I had to reduce it. So yes, I've been peeping it. And this is exactly, and I'm in great support of that movement as well. And so maybe one day I can have him on the program, so he can further explain it. And so it'll be nice to have something like that here. So here in the United States, of what he's doing across the pond. And Carl Spears asks, you did make a connection between the spiritual arts involved in creation of new hip hop dances and traditional African dances. Yes, I mean, it's like there's, it's all of our dances, whether we believe it or not, are spiritual in nature, because the spirit itself is the music. So your body responds to the spirit of the music that is playing. So your body is going to respond one way if it's just a drum ensemble for like the djembes or whatnot. It's going to respond differently if it's a marching band music. But just like when the break beats came on, we responded with the break dance. But when like something more soulful, we respond in terms of like the electric slide. Like, so, but it's all, what I'm trying to get many of us to understand is that just because African people went to Europe, went to Brazil, went to Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, the United States, etc., the Africans did not die. They may have been forced to adopt the colonial languages of the area, but they still have their minds intact in terms of their ways of being, because we weren't allowed to be like Europeans. So we only drew from our own traditions, even if we lost the full knowledge of how they came to be. So the same essences that created our historical ways of expression are still present with us now. And so there's no reason why, like if we have a conversation about African dance, that we don't include crumping or breakdancing into African dance, right? Well, or MC Hammer's movements as African dance, because these are African people. And what is African is anything that the Africans create. And so all of this is the tradition. And so what I'm trying to get us to understand is that these are African expressions. And the way that we re-Africanize, or that we see them as such, is to label them as such. Thus the names for these particular healing arts: Ashejo, Eshegun, Afalshe, etc., etc. And Itaye, or Itaye, or is it Itaye? Am I pronouncing that right? Itaye says, the clip you shared about African dances transform you to a higher heights and raise your kundalini. Agree with Joshua Mapanga says about the drums. Yes, and that's exactly, like, if you read that book, Boiling Energy, by Katz, that I showed earlier, he's going through the whole entire thing of how the music, the drumming, and the stomping of the feet and etc., it conjures up the spirit. Because this is what I didn't add into the conversation, is that the dancing transforms you into a spirit. The the Kung dances boils the energy, boils the body to separate the soul or the spirit of the body, so that it can enter God's realm, so that it can look at all the spirits that are forcing disease on the people. It's a healing dance. And so while they are in a spirit state, they are able to touch and draw out the sickness of the people who are in the dance circle, right? And this is why I compare this to what you see in the crump dance. Like, go watch that film Rise if you have not seen the documentary film. It came out in like 2006 or 2005, I believe, and it is an excellent film. It's by like Dave Chappelle or something like this. So it's not Dave Chappelle, the comedian, but he has a similar name as Dave Chappelle. And he's the director and videographer for that film. And so that's what we got to understand. Our dancing turns us into spirit, right? And it's the similarities, for example, in crumping, where they wear the face paint and the mask, is similar to when you go on the continent of Africa and they wear a mask to resemble the concept of spirit, so that you're not focusing on the individual, you're seeing the spirit as it is expressed through that body, right? And you're welcome. And peace to the blessed one. There he go, making FBA mad again. Hey, I'm about truth. And, for those who go by the moniker FBA, I'm not ultimately mad at it. I understand what they're trying to do, but they act like what we created here in the United States was created in a vacuum, as if we had no culture, no survival of nothing. And so these are people who don't study at all and don't even know, for example, that a lot of the hip hop and jazz terms are actually African words, right? That we retain. And so, a lot of these folks are people who want to believe that they are Native American Indians and that they have no tie to Africa. And so this is in part to correct that misunderstanding that's going on in these YouTube spaces. And thank you to T-Rex. Yes, it's David LaChapelle. That's the name of the person. So when I learned West African dance of Gambia, Senegal, and Mali, it seems so familiar. Indeed. And who's really taken the moniker now, in my personal opinion, is the South Africans, right? Like, they've been able to. So in South Africa, you have this sound, this music that they call amapiano. And amapiano is largely inspired by, African-American house music and jazz. But its undertone is its native music. That is birthed there in South Africa. And when they mix that together, you get this sound called amapiano. And you can tell, for example, I'm a play a track right now, and you can tell, even though they have they're utilizing electronic devices, they're still playing the modern electronic devices as if they're still playing the drums with their hand. And you can kind of hear it in this song here. So I'm gonna let it play. that's a good track, but that's not the track I wanted. I thought I uploaded it here, but I didn't. So I'm uploading it right now, and I'm gonna play the song. And this, to me, is a perfect example of a track that, you know, even though you can, you know, for those of us that know the history, we know that there's influence there, but this is South Africans drawing on their own traditions and creating a vibe. And I'm bringing this up because they respond in a similar way that African Americans respond to their own music. And the way that you dance to this music is based upon the beat that is on the track, right? And so here's the track. I'll pause it right there, but I just wanted to let y'all hear just a little bit. Like, for those who can kind of really hear it, you can hear that, you know, it's traditionally based on house, but is they changed the rhythm of house, and they using their own internal rhythms. And you know, I guess it's more so of, for those of us who have an ear, who produce music or whatnot, you can tell that, I don't know if this was made, you know, using sounds on the keyboard or from the actual drum machine, but they are transferring the hand movements on the drums, the hand drums, the djembes and the like, to the electronic medium, whether it's the drum pads or on the keyboards, and is bringing that unique sound, which of course brings a different set of unique dance movements that you can see. Like, if you kind of look at Amapiano on YouTube or TikTok, you know, they dance in a unique, different way, right? So that's all within that particular tradition itself. And Brother Shakara says he gives a recommendation, The Spirit of Into, album by Ndudozo Makathini, if I'm saying that correctly. And he says it's a beautiful work. So I'll definitely will check that out. And peace and blessings to Sister Mika in the building. And Brother Kimway 221, he says similar thing in Senegal. In depth healing has dances where one imitates animals like eagles, drop down and get your eagle on. Indeed. And X_G says, how do you dance to heal, to struck, to get into a trance? So what, from my understanding, and it's the only way that I can explain it is that you get lost in the movements to the point where you kind of exhaust yourself. Because if you study dance across Africa, you'll know that it is a principal means for being possessed, or what they say like in Golden Blade, being mounted by a spirit. Right? So it's almost as if you're being possessed by a spirit and you're no longer in control of your body. And it reaches you to a state where all your energy is exhausted and you just go into that trance. And so when the young lady got struck, you know, we don't know what all the traumas Miss Daisy, that's her name in the film, was going through, but she danced so hard that, you know, she exhausted all her energy and went into that particular state. And so you get it by getting buck. You get into it. It's you get to a point where you're no longer trying to dance consciously and make moves. The spirit has fully taken over your body and it is responding. So the way that I usually articulate this is to think of it as our good brother Lil C said in the film earlier, you know, imagine a ball of energy, but he's talking about it being held in your hand. I argue that it is let's say, you know, somebody took, you know, this ball of energy and threw it at you, and it got inside your body and it's temporarily being trapped in your body. Well, it can't stay in one location. It has to move all throughout the body. So that ball of energy is moving rapidly throughout the body, and everywhere that it finds a barrier is a particular quote unquote dance move. And so it's almost like you were being, if you've ever ridden a mechanical bull or a real bull, but you know, most people haven't ridden a real bull, but if you've ridden a mechanical bull, you know that it is hard to stay on a mechanical bull. But there are some who have been doing it so long, they become one with the bull. And it's the same thing with this. You're dancing, you're being controlled by the jàshe. We'll call it the jàshe. But then there becomes a point where you are one with the jàshe. So now you can ride the bull, you know, with ease. It makes it look easy. You're moving along with the jàshe instead of against it. Right? And then the jàshe, you know, regardless, has to leave the body, and it does, and it transfers on to somewhere else. And this is how you get into these particular states. And Sister Mika says wants to see a SAR do that. You should have seen me at the club. Follow me to a Halloween party. We was getting buck in the Halloween party already, you know. And Brother Kimway says that every spirit has a beat. Indeed. You know, every song that is created is a spirit itself. Like people think that spirits are already exist, but you can create spirits as well. And that's what the music creation process is. You have a spirit that influences you in the making process, but you in turn make a new spirit. And so when you play that music, you send that spirit to possess the audience, and they respond in a certain way, being possessed by the spirit, which is why, and this is part of the larger conversation of jàshe and hip hop as a kimoyo tradition, why the gangster music, the trap music, the slut music, the death drill music, all that is detrimental to the minds in a developing community, because it is, and this is why I say that these are not trap music, gangster music, or gangster rap, drill music. None of that is hip hop, because the moniker of hip hop is love, peace, and having fun. And so killing another person, stabbing another person, raping another person, like you have, like, as much as I love DMX, and I feel sympathy for DMX because I understand his history, and he literally was fighting demons because somebody laced one of his blunts with crack cocaine, and that started his addiction and downfall. And if you listen to a lot of his lyrics, you can tell that he's fighting demons, but he's saying stuff in the lyrics that is anti-life. You know, like on his Funk Flex freestyle, you know, he says the lyrics something like, kidnap your kids, rape your wife while she's sleeping. I've been off the deep end since I was semen. That's why now I'm such a motherfucking demon, screaming my bloody head off. Shit on my mind, I need to get off. Right? And so the idea of killing kids, kidnapping kids, and raping someone's wife, that's not hip hop. And so when you make music like that, you're creating a spirit. And our people are being possessed by these detrimental forces, these quote unquote demonic forces that are being created and sent out through the music. And a lot of us don't want to hear it. They think it's religious talk, and it's not. This is the thinking of our tradition. If we was thinking through an Africological lens, we would understand this, and we wouldn't promote these songs. We wouldn't allow our children to listen to them, because you're embedding a spirit that, when given the right environment, it can be called upon to do the caller's bidding. And this is what we want to prevent, and why we want to institutionalize hip hop culture, so that it could be useful and we can use it to draw on our traditions. And so, like, I was having a conversation with a professor colleague of mine, and I was explaining the jàshe tradition, and I was talking about the Orin Ashe or Orinshe tradition. It's the expression of Ashe through music, right? And DJing. And there is there's the question of, well, how practical is this? And I tell folks that, for example, if you train young folks how to DJ and to produce and how to sample, they one of the effects is them being great scholars. because the same techniques that is utilized in what we call digging in the crates, searching for samples, is the same thing that you're going to need when you're doing scholarship. So instead of digging in the crates of the music stores like back in the day, you dig in the library crates. You read the particular text to find that great sample. And then you take those samples from the records and you create a new record. That's all scholarship is analyzing, taking the samples, taking what people have written before, synthesizing that data and creating a new song, a new narrative. Because part of the writing process is learning how to create a narrative. And so everything that we learn in the jàshe tradition in hip hop is transferable to many other areas of life. Everything is jàshe. Everything is kung fu. But are there any more questions? And again, if you want to join the panel and speak on anything, the link is pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube. So, if I don't have any more questions, I will just, kind of end the conversation. So I know there's a delay, so I'm just going to wait a little bit. And can we say that's how pop locking started? And it says manufactured Gregory. Yep. And this a whole conversation can be had on this. Thank you for joining the conversation and for your support and for your commentary. And so that's, I can't wait to go through everything, and so people could really start seeing the practical applications of everything that we're talking about, because it's we don't have to reinvent anything. We already have everything. It's just unorganized. And so all I'm doing is organizing what we have created and institutionalizing it so that we can build, use it to help build better people and build opportunities for ourselves to expand. And there's so much that the world can use when it comes to understanding hip hop culture and its underlying philosophy. And so indeed. So I know I kind of posted this in kind of, last minute and the like, but so I wanted to get out there. Usually I, kind of right after the conference, I'll do the the representation online, but I was in the midst of travels and some other things, so I didn't have time to get back here. So you're going to start seeing more shows. So for those of you who are not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you are subscribed, and make sure that you in turn that is right, hit the like button and make sure that you share this episode. So I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, even if you came in late. When you rewatch it, you know, let me know what you think. And, you know, we're going to continue to build. And so I would love for a number of y'all to be participants, you know, in this developing institutionalization of hip hop culture under the guise of jàshe and the jazz tradition. And you know, we can leave our mark by giving our children something to be proud of and something that they can utilize in their lives based on the ancestral traditions that we leave them. So I do appreciate each and every one of you again. And if you're on Patreon, make sure that you go and visit and check out the latest interview of Dr. Kujichagulia that we did. And so it will be there for probably another week or so. And, you know, then I'll probably premiere it, or at least part of it, to the general public. So until next time, we'll see y'all later. Hotep, peace.
Tokyo wanna those that what's up? Feeling like I dropped the draw for and call Uno. Came to kick the door with the game man judo. Pin game low, that's why they give me kudos. Inspired by the 3-0, 595 check it for pack flight. Hit the turnpike, slide to a baseline. Gotta sound like I just hit the 85. Oh, I'm so ready, by enemies necessary. We gon' be legendary. Hold up, about to grow the payrolls. If you see the vision and you're with it, you should say so. Cause we bout building, elevating the millions.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.